Hey guys, it's Scott from fxmissions.com. Just a note, I've finished the trilogy of anthologies from the forefront, and all 3 books are currently available on Amazon. Welcome to From the Forefront, an FX Missions podcast. Stories about courageous souls who felt the call of missions and obeyed. Hey guys, Scott here. Just a little housekeeping item. A number of podcasts here, this one included, was caught on the road in Guanajuato, Mexico, and the audio quality is not as good as it would usually be. Sorry for that. The guys in engineering have done their best. And so we do want you to make the most of this content, and we think it'll be a blessing to you. So do enjoy it. Do rate us. Let someone know and be inspired and take action. That's our hope here at FX Missions. So thanks for joining us, and sorry again about the audio challenges that were created by recording on the road. Thanks a lot. Hey, Scott McClelland here with your FX Missions From the Forefront podcast. Thanks for being with us. We got a great opportunity today. I'm thinking it's going to be great. No, I'm here with friends in Puebla, Mexico, Josh and Ivonne McNally. Their real names have been redacted.
Keeping up safe.
I'm just kidding around, but we've known each other for a few years, I'd say. That'd be safe to say.
Yeah, 10 plus.
10 plus, yeah. I think my first trip to Esperanza Viva was in 2005, in the fall of 2005. I think it was the fall. But so since we're all getting younger, that's awesome, right? Yeah. So Josh and Ivonne are they're having me here in their home. This is awesome because I get to spend time with you guys and keep you up late.
Yay! We love you.
Well, it's definitely mutual, I can promise you. And for a reward, I'll get you in and out next time you're in town for sure. Yeah. So, no, but thanks for jumping in here. So you guys, we're here in Puebla. You guys are, you're a part of Esperanza Viva.
Yeah.
And I don't know like the official names, but what's the official? I mean, I know you guys have a lot going on, but the umbrella sort of organization, is that Esperanza Viva?
Yeah, that's the one. I think in the States it would be Living Hope.
Living Hope International,
which means
right?
Esperanza Viva, in Spanish. I think that would be the umbrella of it all.
Okay,
and
cool.
Then maybe Nations Church here in Mexico.
Okay, Nations Church in Mexico. And
Puebla,
all of this is in Puebla.
Mm-hmm. All
Puebla.
this is in Puebla.
Yeah. And so for those of you who don't know, Puebla is, I guess it's due east of Mexico City, kind of across the Sierra Madres. Am I saying it right? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
More or less?
Yeah, more or less.
He's giving me the benefit of the doubt, guys. No, yeah. But here we are on the other side of Mexico City from the U.S. And so you guys are a little bit younger than me. We can just leave it right there.
Yeah, nobody needs to know details. It's okay. Safe.
No, but so Josh, I mean, I met you. I'm not sure if I met you in the U.S. or here, but I mean, I know I met you when you were spending some years in the U.S. and you were in school and stuff.
Yeah.
Were you there in 2005?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and count the years. But I do remember meeting you in the States.
Yeah.
So that was right around 2005.
Yeah.
I may not have been here during your first visit.
Okay.
I may have been in the States by then.
Okay.
So we crossed paths afterwards.
Okay. That's cool. And then, so you kind of, I mean, as I understand it, and this is like missionary gold, right?
Okay.
You're born on the field.
Yeah, that's me.
They usually say that with like this epic thundering, drama voice. Born on the field.
Yeah, born on the field. A lot of people are dysfunctional because of that. A lot of strange stereotypes for born on the field. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a good experience.
Awesome. Well, you're still here, so that speaks to maybe you're not trending with the averages, maybe. You know, that's really cool. I always thought that was awesome. You know, like a testimony kind of thing. If it, I mean, from a guy who didn't get involved in missions till he was 35. You know, I'm thinking, born on the field. Wow, could not be over. You know, you couldn't get over that. Couldn't get higher. So, and you were born in Oaxaca, Mexico.
Right, Oaxaca. You know, driving, it's about 5 hours south from where we are right now.
Right.
One of the more, I would say, like impoverished states in Mexico by comparison.
Yeah.
A really different environment there. We were in the kind of mountainous region, very rural, very remote.
Yeah.
Versus Puebla, the city of Puebla, you know, by Mexican standards, it's one of the more developed modern cities in the country. So it's a lot different. Both Mexico, but two different worlds within.
Right.
And I think I loved and enjoyed them both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up in Oaxaca for a lot of your, or some of your childhood.
Right up until about first grade. So honestly, I don't remember nearly as much from Oaxaca as I do from Puebla. I would say Puebla is much more home than Oaxaca.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've been to Oaxaca, and I mean, in some of my experiences, even today, as Mexico, of course, has developed a lot over the last 20 plus years, incredibly, in fact.
Right.
You know, Oaxaca is like, in some places, is the land that time forgot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just, the in terms of the way time has changed things,
Yeah.
it hadn't been so much in the rural areas.
Yeah, and they have a lot of culture in Oaxaca. I mean,
yeah.
Mexico, it's the state where there's the most languages spoken. They have, I hope I'm not exaggerating when I say hundreds of dialects. And so a lot of culture, a lot of art, a lot of language, things that they're intentional about holding on to.
Yeah.
So some of the things where time stands still, you know, you wish it could do better, but a lot of that, too, is also just their culture.
Right.
That they don't want to see fade away, which, you know, some of that is really neat.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I still remember, and I'm not sure if I think you were on this trip that we did, and where we were being translated twice. We were doing like English to Spanish to...
Okay, yeah, Mixteco.
And that was so awesome. I mean, mind-blowing to hear a language being spoken that had no Latin roots or nothing that was recognizable.
Yeah.
I was just like in another world, man. That was so cool. Of course, I had a hard go of it in Oaxaca some because I was used to comfort in terms of, you know, whatever was normal at home, you know.
Yeah.
But it was such a rich experience, like you're saying, culturally incredibly rich and diverse. You know, I've been around Oaxaca on some of the different sides. But so you were in Oaxaca till first grade.
Yeah.
And then you guys ended up in Puebla after, you know, I'll get your dad to tell some of those dramatic stories one day. I'm hoping I can.
Yeah.
It was, you needed for purposes of, you know, survivability, you guys needed to, you know, not be in Oaxaca. I know that you guys were instrumental in getting the gospel to a lot of villages out there kind of for the first time, or in some cases, definitely for the first time. A lot of built-in resistance, some of their kind of, I don't know, worldviews that were present didn't really treat evangelical Christianity with a welcome mat. You know, it was kind of pushback. And so you guys moved on, you got to Puebla. And your dad, of course, is like, to me, a pillar, really, of missions, especially in this part of Mexico. I've really enjoyed and been honored to be, you know, have a friendship with him these years. What was it like growing up, you know, as, you know, like twice the height of everyone else? Or, you know, you're a good bit taller than me. And, I mean, that's putting it, you know, mildly, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm probably taller than most folks around here. So what was that like growing up?
I can't take credit really for any of the, you know, accomplishments for the gospel in the kingdom. I was mostly along for the ride. Like I didn't even know what was going on or what we were doing.
Yeah.
But I guess in some ways it's kind of an advantage. I mean, if you are going to be on the mission field, to have been born there, because this was all that I really knew. So it didn't seem strange to me. You know, I loved where we grew up. I had, you know, friends there. I learned to speak the language with them. and that was home for us.
Wow.
And then eventually when we came to Puebla, it was the same thing where this became our home. And it wasn't, a lot of, friends I have that are missionaries, they have kids who came to Mexico after they already had roots in the States. And I know that can be really tough to leave, family, friends, memories behind. But I guess for me it was different because this was always closer to home.
Right.
You do always stand out a little bit, especially in Oaxaca and places like that. I was always the tall white dude. But I don't know. I don't feel like people were very unappreciative of it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I was really ever, heckled about it too much.
Yeah.
When it was for the most part friendly, just messing around. So I don't carry, any kind of stigma there. But I think one of the coolest things about it is you get to get a perspective of two really different ways of thinking, or maybe three. Even between Oaxaca and Puebla, people think very differently. And then, between people from America and then Mexico, people think differently. And so in our house, we would always speak English. That was my parents' way of making sure that we spoke English and learned how to speak it. We did homeschool for a fair amount of years. So we had, a fair amount of American influence, music, movies. We'd go back to the States to visit or renew our papers. So fairly consistently, we got in touch with kind of our American roots, our American family, the American way of thinking. But then we grew up in Mexico surrounded by a totally different culture, totally different way of thinking, totally different way of, the way families operate and doing things. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And I think for me, it was cool to be able to be somewhere in between. Yeah. To try and see the best in both cultures and hopefully embrace the best of both and shy away from some of the stuff that I didn't love about, either one of these in particular. Yeah. So I don't know how to describe it because it was all I knew. I don't have another point of reference or anything to compare it with. But I can say I think my life is richer for it. Yeah. I think it's I'd say it's been a privilege to grow up here. I think I have so much more appreciation for what I have and the people I know and the way I live than I would have if I hadn't been able to experience this. Yeah. Well, you finished school, high school. You went to the States. You were there a few years. Right. Was it 2 or 3? It was just over 2. Okay, yeah. So I knew it was in that range. So you got sort of a baptism in U.S. culture. I remember you told me a story about getting your driver's license. Oh, yeah. And for those of you who have driven or ridden in Mexico, you'll know there are some differences. It's funny, these days when I'm in Mexico and I'm driving, I just instantly shift into I'm driving in Mexico.
Crazy mode.
I'm passing 18-wheelers that are on the side of the road and other cars are coming and I'm just doing it. Yeah. And, but didn't you had a little trouble, if I remember right, about getting your license? What happened there? I failed 3 times my driving test in the States. So technically, I already had a license. I had a license in Mexico. Right, yeah. And I drove with my family from Puebla, Mexico, to Minneapolis in Minnesota, which is about a 40-hour drive. And so I drove myself there to take the driving test to get my U.S. license, but I failed. And basically, I just learned too many habits that weren't approved or sanctioned. Honestly, they were just being ridiculous. They should have given me a license. I'm a great driver. But anyway, I thought so. I might have sassed back at them and talked back and stuff like that. But that complicated things. But yeah, eventually I got a license and we're all good. Well, the story I remember is like you there was traffic merging or something, and you got in front. I was accused of cutting someone off. Yeah, that's what I remember. You said the guy said, "Hey, you cut that guy off." You said, "Hey, I had all this room." And that's one thing you notice between Mexico and the U.S. is the room between cars. Yeah. There is a lot of difference between those two things. It's crazy. Yeah, so they were over the top Minnesota nice in that situation. I didn't really cut him off, but anyway, it was too close for comfort for my driving instructor. And, I had to retake the test. Yeah, well, I'm tracking with you. Comfort zones, I think, are the more comfort zone we have, the more we want. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's seen, I think, very clearly in the U.S. driving. That's one thing Philippe said, a friend, who's here with us.
he said, I can't believe in the U.S. how far everybody is away from each other on the road. It's like, don't come within 20 feet of me, or whatever, or 100 or whatever it is. So you finished up there. And when you got back, I think this nice lady beside you might have been here in Puebla serving. So maybe we can get Ivonne to tell a little bit about her story. You're not from Puebla. You are from Mexico.
I was born also in Oaxaca, which is funny.
No way.
I was born in Oaxaca.
I did not know that.
A few months before. I'm not going to say how many months before, but a few months before him. Yeah. But then we moved to Juarez, which is a border with El Paso, Texas. Yeah. It was very popular for very bad reasons.
Yeah.
So I grew up there. I was there for 20 years. And then I came. I think I came when he had been already here for like a year or so.
I had it confused in my head because during some of those days, I was traveling here and visiting. And so I don't think I knew you were born in Oaxaca. Was your family from Oaxaca?
No, my parents worked, or my dad worked for some governmental institution. And so they moved him around. He actually was in Mexico City, Aguascalientes, Oaxaca. And we ended up in Juarez doing something totally different. But my parents are still there, and that's my hometown.
Okay. So were your family roots, were they Mexico City? Or I mean...
From all over, because my mom's mom is German.
Okay.
So we're, from all over the place. My dad is more rooted from Aguascalientes, so that's down south Mexico.
Yeah. I love Aguascalientes. It's I really, really like it. Yes, it's awesome.
It is.
So, so he had been here, he had been back from his voyages abroad and educating and all that for a year.
Yeah.
And then you came down. You came down to serve, and something was going on.
I was trying out full-time ministry. I just wanted to try it out for 4.5 months, and I've been here for over 10 years. So that's the longest 4.5 months of my life.
Sound like the trial went well.
Yeah, it went. Yeah, it went good. Yeah. So I came here, and I think I did 10 different things before just finding where my really big passion was. And I mean, we've been married for 9 years, so he's one of my big passions.
Yes, absolutely. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you.
9 years.
9 years.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So we've been working together since then.
I don't know if she mentioned this, but she's a school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so one of her best friends was a friend with my sister, and she had spent a summer at the orphanage just with the kids. So that's kind of how Ivonne heard about it.
Okay.
And she initially came and, was accepted to live here because of, her teaching ability. She had volunteered to come teach for free, so we don't usually turn that away. And that was kind of her in. And the idea was that she was going to, try this idea of missions and ministry out for a while.
Yeah.
And I think being here was it was meant to be like a trial by fire to see if this is my thing or if I should just, well, I tried it, and now I can move on with my life.
And it was a big deal because even, I am Mexican. My first language is Spanish, and, these are my roots. But really, the border towns are not Mexico.
They're
so I was very proud of myself being all Mexican, and it was
maybe that they're not Mexico is a big statement, but they're very different culturally.
Culturally, it's there's a tide pool that's on both sides of the border. You know what I'm saying?
And even in America, the far north is a lot different from the south. Oh,
yes.
So in Mexico, we have
same thing.
It's not this exact same differences, but there's a change as you move further south into the country.
But I really thought, I got this. I'm just going to Puebla. It's not going to be that bad. It was a shock. For reals, it was a shock. It was a shock for at least, the biggest shock was at least the first 2 weeks here. I mean, I'm very emotional, but I cried every night thinking, what am I doing here? Should I just go back to Juarez? Or
seriously?
And she's very hardcore.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when she came here, she lived in with the kids from the orphanage. So, I mean, for people listening who don't know much about what we do here,
give us a rundown on what you guys do.
I mean, just real basic. But the ministry here started in Puebla as an orphanage, and so we would basically rescue kids off of the streets, kids in at-risk situations, trafficking, abuse, things like that.
Yeah.
And so they live in at the orphanage full-time, and we provide food, education, care, and everything you would for a kid as if it was your own kid.
Yeah. Okay.
And in our system, the kids are usually taken care of by staff who live in with them 6 days a week for 24 hours a day while they're with them. And so Ivonne went from being fairly independent, having an income, a car, a vehicle, freedom, to all of a sudden spending 6 full days a week with, I can't remember how many kids you had when you first moved in here.
12, from 3 to 7.
Okay, so she moved into a dormitory. She wasn't alone. There were other, staff members with her.
Yeah.
But it's just intense. It's really, it's a shock for someone who's not used to it.
I like the way I describe it is just being single and then the next day being a single mom of 12. It was just like, how do I do this? Like, how do I even parent these kids? And it's being far away from home. Like it was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was intense. And then during those first 4 months, we met. But we didn't start dating until about 6 months after she'd been here. So she had a chance to choose, I guess. And after that, I persuaded her to stay longer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, now we could go in all sorts of directions from right here, but I'm loving. I thought I knew all the story. Okay, so I guess I'm like, I did not know you were a school teacher.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What was your training? What was your teaching? What were you trained to teach?
Elementary.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah. Elementary education.
So I had been working for 6 years already.
Okay.
In like the private system. Is that?
Yeah.
Private school.
Yeah, private schools. Yeah. But then I was going to try and apply for the governmental positions. So if like my plan B was if Puebla, Living Hope, Esperanza Viva fails per se, I was going to go back to Juarez. But God just found me. And it was so fun because some of the things I'm doing now, I think I dreamed about when I was like 8 years old.
Wow.
And then God reminded me of those first months. Just like, do you remember you prayed for this? Remember you wanted this? Remember you wished this? So, yeah, here I am. This is my home now.
Well, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the you mentioned the orphanage piece of the ministry, and that was kind of the founding element.
Right.
You guys went on to add some other elements over the years.
So after the orphanage, I think the next big piece that came into play was school. So now we have a K through 12 school.
Okay.
And it's open, obviously, for the kids at the orphanage, but now it's also open to kids in the community. I think at this point we have more kids from the community who are living with their own families attending the school than we do kids at the orphanage. But one of the reasons for that was that the kids that we received, because of their background, most of them were behind in school. They hadn't been attending, or they were just, their age didn't correspond
with their grade level.
With their grade level. And so at the time, the public school system here really didn't have the resources or, I don't know, a way to help them.
Yeah.
And so we had 12-year-old kids assigned to first grade, and it made them feel awful because they're surrounded by little kids who know more of the alphabet and read better than they do. So they just really struggled with school. Some of our kids had learning disabilities, and the system just wasn't designed for that. It wasn't able to cope with them very well, and so most of our kids were becoming really frustrated with school. They weren't progressing, and then they were starting to have trouble at school, I think, because of that.
Yeah.
And so eventually we just realized a lot of these kids need more specialized attention. They need a different system. They need to be met at their level and grow from there. And so we developed our own school system to work with them. And initially it was for them. And then over time, we've been doing this, or the orphanage has been around, I should say, for over 20 years now. So over time, that's kind of developed into a full-blown school for, kids from all kinds of backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and 2 years ago, right, you guys opened the school to the community.
Right. Up until then, it had been mostly focused on the kids from the orphanage, with a few exceptions. And then now more recently open to the community.
Yeah. Very cool. So you've got the orphanage, the school.
Right. And then afterwards, my parents, during their time in Oaxaca, their passion was church planting. And it's kind of a long story, but they intended to do that when they arrived at Puebla. In Puebla, they started to see kids living on the streets, kids asking for money at street corners, stoplights, which just wasn't as common in the rural village areas.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole series of events there that kind of left them with a burden to help these kids instead of trying to plant another church.
Yeah.
And so they did that, I want to say, for about 10 years. Before they tried to open another church here in the city.
Okay.
But about 10 years into it, after the school, after the orphanage were off the ground, they felt like they were supposed to start a church again. So they started Nations Church here in the city. And then along with that, it's not a seminary, but I'm just going to say a ministry training center.
Okay.
It's not a very attractive name. It sounds better in Spanish, but they wanted to be able to help train young people from Mexico for missions, for ministry, and to be able to work at places like our orphanage. And so those two ministries came on afterwards, and now we've really grown to a point where they're all kind of interrelated, but most of our staff now comes through the School of Ministry or through the church.
Okay.
And we have a really great system now to where we recruit and train people to work for the kids, and it's really increased the standard and quality of care our kids are getting.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that grow. It's been awesome. So you got the ministry training center, the church,
Right.
the orphanage, the school. There's got to be something else, and also, when do you have time?
Okay.
Because you guys got a lot going on. Is there something that
I
that
guess
we haven't
the other
mentioned?
big piece is what we would call Living Hope International, which is a 501c3 in the States. And that has kind of a missions focus. Obviously, to Puebla, we host short-term missions. We help people along the way who are doing missions in other parts of Mexico. I think at this point we've had somewhere around 10,000 people come either through or to Puebla that we've been able to assist in some way.
Right.
And so that's a pretty big part of what we're doing. And the hope with that is eventually to facilitate Puebla serving as a launching pad for other countries in the world, to where we could reproduce some of what we're doing here, whether that's an orphanage, a school, a church, or a Bible school in other parts of the world. So
Wow.
that's still a little ways into the future, but that would be kind of the fifth element, the missions arm or missions branch.
Okay.
We've done a lot of local missions in Mexico. We've started a second orphanage up towards the border near McAllen, Texas, and Matamoros on the Mexico side.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the beginnings of this. We continue to reach out to Oaxaca, some of the rural villages. We continually send teams out that way, and our hope is to be able to take this outside of Mexico.
Wow. Well, that's cool, and it's also, I mean that compared to maybe the normal 9 to 5 is kind of probably the stark contrast that you experienced in your first 2 weeks here, in terms of what's involved. I mean, it's not like you get your briefcase on the way out the door, and you bring it back and set it down on the way back. Like is probably common in terms of some kind of workflow that people in the States are used to. And that's, you guys have seen, I think, this vision, the general vision that you're talking about, has been kind of on the table for a long time. But in recent years, you guys have, you've made surges of progress, I would think. When I first came, you guys were down in that little Momoxpan area, and you were doing your stuff. You were doing your stuff, and you're doing your thing there. But your facilities were all scattered around that area of town. And then so in the last, and I'm gonna date myself here a little bit because I can't remember exactly when it was, but we were coming in the mid to late 2000s. The property you guys have now as a mission space was kind of coming online at that time.
Right.
In a different part of the city and all together as one. That's been a big step, I think. Yeah. And now you've got 10 buildings on the property, or I don't know, maybe more than that. But it's been year over year. You guys have put new buildings on the property. Right. I don't know how many acres or hectares the space is, but it's quite a mission space. It's quite a pace. And you also are in the process on a second church, right? Yeah, you got a second congregation that meets fairly close to in a separate but not too far away part of the city. I haven't been there yet. Sorry about that. So this vision has got a root system, right. And I'm excited about that. So, Ivonne, what did you find? You found your niche along the way.
I did.
What you really love.
We met the need of having just youth meetings, and I grew up in an amazing church, and the youth group was just, I think my generation was privileged because of the love our pastors put into the youth group. Yeah. Just like, I don't know, teaching us and helping us just find what God had for us, and whatever missions trips and conferences and different things. So when we got engaged, we were offered to just like restart a youth group. And that's mainly what we've been doing. I mean, amongst a bunch of different stuff here and there. Yeah. We've been doing the youth group for 9.5 years probably, and I think that is probably one of my biggest passions, to just see young people find God's calling for their lives and just fulfilling it. Yeah. And whatever that means. Like for me, it meant I needed to go through my college and finish my degree and maybe work on that specific degree for a few years, but then just coming over here and doing something totally different. But that's what opened the door for me. Right. And like I am just passionate when I see young people finding their thing or getting excited about something. And just like, I don't know, a lot of the young people that work here as staff members, and they come through the Viña, the School of Ministry, and then they fall in love with the kids. And it's like, oh, I never knew how much I love the kids, but this is what I want to do. And then they go back to their home churches, and then they're talking about just doing things for kids or doing some kind of reproducing the School of Ministry. Or I just love how people can use their strength and their best years to just serve the Lord. So I think that's one of my biggest passions, to just see young people get fired up for the Lord. So,
And it was such a big part of your life. I mean, and a shaping part of your life. It's pretty cool that you kind of now are getting to take something that was this is fruit for your pastors, right?
Yes,
right here,
definitely.
What you guys are doing. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I've also heard you sing.
They say. I love singing.
Well,
you know what was funny?
I don't love singing because I'm terrible at it. Okay, everything makes sense now.
Yeah, now I understand. Now I get it. So I used to be a part of the worship team back in my home church. I never led a song. Never.
Seriously?
I was always the back
like
chorus,
you're on the background vocals.
Yeah, exactly.
But like way in the background. way in the background.
Did they turn on your mic?
One time they didn't. And I was just like, oh my goodness, okay, I'm done with this.
I'm done with this. I'm so done.
Yeah. So anyway, when I came here to Puebla, I was so in love with Josh. He was not in love with me. Or he says he was, but he couldn't show it because of rules and whatever.
I was playing it cool.
So anyway, one time he wanted to take our main worship leader to some camp up in the mountains. And I'm sitting next to the worship leader. And Josh is like, so, dude, I want to take you to the mountains to this camp. And he's like, no, I can't do it because I have worship this upcoming Friday. And Josh turns to me and he's like, you could lead worship, wouldn't you? And I was so in love with him that I said, sure,
Anything
I'll do
for
it.
you.
Yeah. And I found my passion. Like I had a passion for just singing and just leading worship and seeing people getting all passionate about it. So my love for him helped me found my...
Come on.
Right?
I'm learning so much. I mean, you kind of are responsible in some way
He is.
for
He's
finding this, man. Wow, that's
nudged
awesome.
her in the right direction.
They did. Yeah.
So you guys now the work youth, and I think youth group in Mexico and ministry here is slightly different than what we have in the States. You know, I mean, it's like
Right.
it's like college career or how does that work here? I know it works differently, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
we initially started working with high school and then college age youth.
okay,
A little bit of that was into the career stage, but mostly people that were still in college.
okay,
And I think we've had a lot of just opportunity here and different roles throughout our time here.
uh-huh,
But that's probably, I think, the one role that really hasn't changed during our time.
yeah,
So we've helped in all kinds of things, but that's just kind of the one
Right.
consistent piece. I guess
Yeah.
we really love doing it, so we're sticking
Yeah.
with it. At this point now, though, we're helping and overseeing all of our, I'm just going to call it youth, under the umbrella of 0 to like 25-year-olds
Right,
in
yeah.
different capacities and
Yeah.
in different ways. But we've kind of expanded our initial role into the children's ministry now, and then into people that are a little bit past the college area and into the career stage.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I knew it was a little bit different. I mean, youth group in the U.S. is like
Yeah. Junior high.
like
high
junior
school.
high and doesn't go past
Okay.
like high school, or you have to be 13 to get in, and then
Right.
18 you're out or whatever, something like that. So it's a little bit broader here, and for that reason, you guys have you ministered across a bigger cross section of people. But I guess if you get married, you kind of are out of the youth group,
Yes.
right?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, I guess, that is it's a fairly defined line, if you will, in the way the culture works.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, and let's talk for a minute just about your family, because
Okay.
this like love inferno, you guys are so like madly in love with each other that you started a family.
We started a family.
And I've got special affection for your little kiddos because it takes me back a few years.
Yeah, I could imagine.
And the same symmetry of
Girls, yeah.
the kind and quality and all that.
Yeah.
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 What about your family?
We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Wow.
All girls. Wild.
So we've got an interesting kind of 6, 2, 4, and
Nope. and a puppy maybe soon or something.
but that was I'm
We've
gonna have
talked about adopting, maybe.
Okay,
But
yeah.
we're-
Do that.
Yeah.
Our youngest is still in diapers, and we're hoping
Yeah.
to clear the diaper stage before we really seriously sit down to
We
think
will
Yeah.
about
clear
anything
him.
else.
Yeah.
well. I've got to say, you guys have a tight rotation there. 6, 4,
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
worked out.
Intentional, folks. Good work,
Yes,
guys. Good
yes.
work. And 3 little girls.
3 little girls. Yeah. Yeah.
My heart. I'm telling you, I had 3 little girls at one time. They were spread out a little bit broader than that. Was 10 years between our 3.
Okay.
So it was 4.5 and then 5.5, I guess, between and two gaps there. But yeah, wow,
Yeah.
little girls, they're something else.
Yeah.
They're a constant education for dads. I mean,
are.
I'm still being
Learning all
educated.
kinds.
I'm still in school.
Yeah.
You too?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot.
Yeah,
I'm working through it.
You're an awesome dad, though. I got to say that
Yes.
I've observed you, and That's all. I mean, you just
We
got
try
away
to put
with
a
it.
game face on when you're around. Gotta look good. But
You're running excellent game. Let me just say that.
Smile.
Yeah, you're just the girls have not busted you in front of me. Dad, that's not what you normally do. I don't understand.
we've got a system with them.
It works out.
They're really good kids.
They
We
love
love it, and it changes everything.
Wow.
Kids change everything. Learn more from kids than any kind of college or Bible school.
I'm saying.
Kids will teach you a lot.
Kids raise the parents. That's what I have said for a long time.
And it is true. It's totally true.
Yeah. It's that kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
You have to reach somewhere else inside yourself, and find, and also in God's grace, and find, what it's going to take to go there.
Those are the two things that mature you as a Christian. I think it's marriage, goodness, and kids.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, it's like, oh Lord, I'll be near you. I need you more than.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of things in life are this way, but you can't fully understand it until you experience it.
Yeah.
Right.
I grew up around the orphanage, working with the kids in some capacity. So I thought, even before I had kids, that I had at least some of the basics down.
Yeah.
But then you have kids of your own, and they're with you all the time, and just you realize how much you don't know.
Wow. Yeah. No matter how much and maybe especially how much you thought you knew, you get
a lot of the things you realize you didn't know what you were talking about.
That washes out.
What did they say? You're a good parent until you become a parent, or something like that.
In your mind, at least.
Yeah. It's true. Definitely.
I could say that. True in my case as well.
Yeah.
So you guys are, right now you're experiencing some church growth. I know you guys have got a lot of ministry goals and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But what would you like to say about just some forecast stuff? And then we'll wrap it up with, how people could get in touch with or know more about the ministry and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess on the forecast side, I love Mexico, obviously. And I see an awesome emerging church in Mexico. Not that there isn't a great church right now, but over time the church in Mexico has been growing. It's hard to get an exact number, and I'm just, off the top of my head trying to remember these statistics without messing it up too much. But I think I'm not far off when I say the evangelical church, the kind of born-again believers in Mexico, that church has almost doubled over the last 20 years.
Wow.
And the indicators now are that's continuing to grow and moving in the right direction. And so I guess I'm really excited, not just our church, but church, at large in Mexico. As I talk to different pastors in the city, it's hard for me to find a church in our city that's not growing. So that's really encouraging. Obviously, I want our own church, the church that I attend, to thrive. But I see our city, the churches in our city, as a whole, really progressing. And then as you kind of travel around Mexico and see some of what God's doing in the country, it's really encouraging to see where things could be headed. To as I see the type of leaders being raised up, the type of pastors. Just, I don't know, I see a lot of energy, a lot of calling, a lot of promise in the church in Mexico at large. So I think over time you're going to be hearing some amazing things coming out of Mexico, some amazing missionaries and pastors and musicians and authors. I feel in some cases that they haven't quite had their time yet. Not that great things haven't come out of Mexico, but I feel like the best really is yet to come in Mexico. And I know that phrase maybe is overused, but I feel with the Mexican church, that's the case right now. Awesome things have happened, but I am convinced that the best is really still yet to come in Mexico. And I'm hoping to be around to see some of that. It could take time, I realize this. But I think if things continue the way they are, and obviously I think God is behind this and something amazing is on the way. So I'm excited,
Amen. I think that's awesome. Like you've got a trajectory of hope there. And something tells me you're going to be around.
Yeah,
I feel pretty sure. Or it feels at least likely. At least till he gets these girls raised, right? You're sticking around. Yeah, of course you're rooted, and thank God for it. But what some folks may not realize is that the gospel is fairly young in Mexico. It's not like, it's not like the Great Awakenings in the 17th and 18th century in the United States. It's a different, completely different context in terms not only of the way the gospel was introduced, maybe, but also the way the gospel, when it kind of, got going here.
Yeah.
Can you take just a minute and kind of give us a brief on how long how long has evangelical Christianity been, going? How long has it been? I know in Oaxaca, your dad was part of the process that got that started, and he's, still doing his thing. So it was not even a lifetime ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a big question.
Well, I mean,
I'm going to try and answer.
Sorry, yeah, sure.
I think, Christianity was introduced to Mexico in a very forceful way. It basically, Catholicism was introduced during the Spanish conquest of Mexico.
Right, yeah.
And it was different from some places in the sense that it wasn't really a choice for a lot of people. It was forced on them.
Yeah.
Traditionally in Mexico, some of the ways they sort of protested against this was by mixing some of their previous traditions and beliefs with the kind of new system that was forced on them.
Uh-huh.
And so I wouldn't go as far as to say that none of them are Bible-believing Christians or anything like that, but there is an element in Mexico where it's become part of the culture.
Right.
I've done interviews on the streets, just questionnaires and things like that, and you can actually find a fair amount of people that would consider themselves atheists, but would also consider themselves Catholic, more for cultural reasons than for religious or spiritual reasons.
Interesting.
And so that that type of ideology has been around for a while. I would say even Catholicism in Mexico, from what I've been able to see and experience, is very different than what you would find in the United States or other parts of the world.
So different, yeah.
And so, that's kind of a long talk. I don't think we have time to get into it here, but
I'm thinking more about evangelical, as you say, born again, Bible believing.
Right.
There was a time when that kind of started. Yeah. It's not so far back as I've been told or as I understand.
Right. I would say, and not that there couldn't have been some pioneer, but bigger steps towards this, they say, are the Baptist and Methodist churches, about 70, at the most 80 years back.
Wow.
Really as seeds, and then over time that's progressed. But I think it would be fair to say that at least half of the existing evangelical church in Mexico is first generation.
Right.
It's not something that's been around for 100 and some years, or that's been passed down 3 or 4 generations. In most cases, this is still a first generation thing. And if you can find an evangelical church in Mexico that has more than 50 years of history, that's the exception in most cases.
Right. Okay, that's the way I understood it.
Yeah.
So I can see with that, I can really see your sort of the optimism in terms of what's possible, where it could go, and there's a lot of greenfield opportunities still left here. I mean, a lot of sort of untouched people who haven't been confronted by the sacrifice of Jesus in a personal way, that might have to, maybe they were baptized or confirmed or they had some kind of traditional experience, but they hadn't been confronted with a personal decision or some kind of the cross is right in front of me in the sense that I need to give my life and surrender to the claims of Christ or something like that. So that's super cool to me. And I think you guys are well positioned to see some of this growth, I'm thankful for that. I really am.
So are we. And these are really, I would just say, times of transition, at least in our city. We have dozens of universities in Puebla. And so that's also something fairly new. on a national standard, just a huge access to education that hadn't been around before.
Right.
A lot of the kind of previous traditions are slowly fading. A lot of the just youth in Mexico aren't embracing them quite as wholeheartedly as before.
Right.
And so it really is a time of change, a time of transition. And within that, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the church to grow and at least to get the message out. People are asking questions. People are open. People are curious. And that, for us, is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're going to keep this in prayer, right? I mean, I think it's important that we, step back from what's normal for all of us and get a sense of what God's doing in the world. Well, what are you doing, Lord? Where and how can we sort of honor that, appreciate that, get involved in that, have some contribution, or at least in prayer, or however it works, which leads me to my next question and final. I mean, if somebody wanted to know more about you guys, about like how to be in touch with what you guys are up to, and maybe, even to get involved. I know there's a ton of short-term mission work that happens right here, and you guys are super squared away. You've been doing it a long time. And all of those sort of random and one-off fears that people think about when they think about coming to Mexico. Yep. No, we're not under the sound of gunfire here in the home of Josh and Ivonne. Thank you. I mean, you guys have done it a bunch, and we're not in the crosshairs over here, sweating bullets trying to get the recording done. It's not what it seems if you watch the the usual suspects gobbing off on the news. So what can someone know about what you guys do in terms of social media, the internet, or how would they find more information, and how might they get involved? Maybe somebody said, "Oh, you guys have an orphanage. I've just been looking for a connection to, have some exposure to that and maybe get some involvement." What would people do to find that?
Right. I think one of the easiest ways is obviously the internet.
Yeah.
www.lovehopemercy.org is the ministry's website. If you plug into that, you can get connected with the orphanage, and then through that up, honestly, to the short-term missions and to everything else that's going on here.
That site kind of consolidates all the different departments.
There's a lot going on there. We have, a few other things going on with social media, but if you wanted to, you could look us up as Josh or Ivonne McNally on Facebook, and my wife is more active on Instagram. I'm not a great missionary, I guess, because I'm not. But if you look for
how could you be a millennial missionary without posting on Instagram at least 4 times?
That was maybe
per day.
Collateral. I came out with most of myself intact, but social media just hasn't had a huge draw to me. I've struggled to get involved.
Well, it seems like to me it's waning with people in terms of fatigue.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to pick a thing and go with it. You know what I'm saying? I've got to say, but if you want to fight, Twitter is where you want to go.
Okay.
I never enjoy it. Yeah.
Twitter, I tried that, but I didn't like to fight.
She doesn't like to fight with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should get on Twitter.
Get your
great for Twitter.
Yeah, you'd be awesome at Twitter fights. And there are so many options for that out there. So lovehopemercy.org.
Yes.
.org.
Yes.
And I think the ministry also has some presence on Facebook, or it did at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't spend too much time on Facebook, though I am Facebook famous. I just don't.
Yeah, it's also Living Hope International for Facebook.
Okay, Living Hope International for Facebook. And folks can find out about short-term work, sponsoring, just all the stuff you got. The church, if maybe somebody's visiting, Central to South Mexico, or or is hearing this and in the region, they can find out how to get in touch with you guys.
There are a bunch of different projects for giving and for being involved. So we have stuff going on all throughout the year. So if you get plugged into that page, you will find a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
They get newsletters and
all this
And if
stuff.
there's something specific you're looking for that you don't find on the site, just send us an email. There's some phone numbers on there that you can get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Sure.
U.S. numbers.
Right,
Yeah.
US numbers.
Yeah. And that's really cool. I really just want to say thank you guys for coming on the podcast. And
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being awesome. That's what people say, right? Don't they say thanks for being awesome?
Hashtag.
Yeah, hashtag.
You might be the first person to say that to me, so thank you.
All right. Well,
that
hey.
specific phrase.
Yeah. Well, hey, I am going full gringo in these shorts in Mexico, so I learned that north of the border.
Yeah.
But no, thank you guys for being on. You're welcome. I'd like to have you on again, and I want to get you on the leadership moment when I'm not keeping you up so late at some point. We can do it on the browser, right? Right. So, no, blessings to you guys.
Yeah.
And thanks.
You.
And
thank you for having us.
we look forward to talking downrange.
Cool.
Sure.
All right.
Take care, guys.
All right.
This podcast made possible through the partnership of Engaging Missions Show, bringing missions home, and encouraging you to hear a message, make connections, and take action. Find out more at engagingmissions.com. Thanks for joining us for the FX Missions podcast from the forefront. If you'd like to find out more about FX Missions, please do so at our blog, fxmissions.com. Quite a bit of content out there. We hope you enjoy it. Also, if you'd like to rate us on iTunes or whatever podcast service you use, we would really appreciate it. And find out more about today's guest at our Facebook page. Just search for From the Forefront on Facebook. If you know of someone who should be featured on From the Forefront because of their forefront missions experience or exploits, please reach out to us at info@fxmissions.com. Thanks again for joining us. And until next time, I'm Scott McClelland, and you have a good one.